Would you let a stranger decide your future if it meant saving your child? Or would you walk back into the storm with pride in one hand and an empty wallet in the other? I knocked on a door to sell candy in the rain, and the man who opened it said, "You're coming to live with me. Before you call me crazy, ask yourself if it were you, what would you have done?" My name is Beatrice. I was 20, tired in the bones, like I was 40, and that day I had $17 in a rinsed-out jelly jar, a tray of homemade fudge, and a 3-year-old with a fever that laughed at tap water and prayers. The bus shook so hard, I had to hug the container to my chest like a second heart. River oaks sliding past the window, like a magazine I couldn't afford to read, houses with hedges sharper than my life. I told myself, sell 25 pieces, and you can buy the medicine, sell 30, and maybe you can buy some fruit too, just keep moving. First house, nothing. Just rain and a brass knocker that looked expensive for no reason. Second house, a lady in a silk robe bought 2, then made me repeat my pitch, then told me the price was too high, like she was doing me a favor. Third house, a man yelled through iron, "We don't buy food from strangers. You ever swallow humiliation like a pill and pretend it tastes sweet, you know what I mean?" And then I saw the gate with curls of wrought iron that made me think somebody's hands bent them, and a fountain that kept working like the storm was for poor people only. I pressed the bell, breath-held hair plastered to my face, blouse gone see-through, because the clouds had manners for everyone but me. The chime inside sounded delicate like a music box, and for a second I hated it, because it reminded me there are gentle sounds in the world that don't include overdue bills. A tall man appeared down the path, dark hair touched with gray at the temples. Green eyes that looked like they'd seen too much, and not enough casual clothes that were clearly expensive, and that quiet kind of authority that makes rooms sit up straight. "Good afternoon, sir," I said, trying to shield the tray. "I know it's pouring, but I'm selling fudge. I made this morning $2 each. My daughter's sick, and I need to buy medicine." "Most people look at you like you're about to trick them or shame them." He didn't. He looked at me like I was a person in a storm, not a problem at his door. "Come in," he said. "You're soaked." And I followed a stranger down a stone path into light that caught in a crystal chandelier and turned into 1,000 tiny rainbows on marble the color of quiet money. His name was Edward Marshall. He told me his father built a construction company. He runs it now. He handed me a towel that smelled like a Sunday morning and asked, "How old is your daughter?" 3, I said, fever and sore throat. And when he asked her father, I squared my jaw like the answer needed armor. "He's not around, just me and her." He didn't flinch, didn't tilt his head and offer judgment. Dressed like sympathy, just nodded. Like the truth had weight, he recognized. "How many do you have?" he asked. 28 left." "I'll buy them all," he said, like he was ordering coffee, and then he pulled 100 from his wallet and laid it on the counter for the medicine and a few other things you both need, whether you accept my proposal or not. 4 words, and my back went stiff because poor women like me learn fast that proposals from rich men come wrapped in ribbon and tied to a hook. "What kind of proposal?" I asked, voice steady, hands not. "Can you cook beyond fudge?" he said. "I can cook anything you can name," I said. "My mama taught me with love and wooden spoons." He looked around that stainless steel museum of a kitchen and said, "The house has been too quiet too long. I need help, room and board for you and your little girl, 2,000 a month. You keep the place together, cook sometimes, weekends off clear boundaries." Silence, and the clock in my head clicked, 1, 2, 3. "Why me?" I asked. "Really, why?" "Because you remind me of someone who would do anything to keep their child safe," he said. And grief flickered through his eyes so quick I almost missed it. I glanced at the 100, thought about 50 for medicine. Thought about my neighbor, Mrs. Rose, watching Ella in our back room that was barely bigger than a closet. Thought about how dignity is real until your kid is sick and then it has to wait. I said I needed time. This wasn't a yes. You buy in the rain. This was my life, my daughter's life. He said, come tomorrow, bring Ella, look around, no pressure. And I believed him because grief recognizes grief even when nobody says the word. I came back. We drew lines on paper and in air, Monday to Friday weekends off. Ella stays in public preschool, not losing herself in a world that isn't hers yet. He offered to drive. I said thank you. I'll do it. He knelt to meet Ella at eye level and called her princess, and asked permission to show her the backyard. Big men who kneel for kids, they hit different. I watched him pause mid-sentence like a memory reached up and closed his throat, and I pretended not to see, to give him room to breathe. We moved in with 2 suitcases and a plastic bag of kitchen odds. He'd set up a small room at the back, full bed for me, twin bed for Ella, a little shelf with 3 toys that looked brand new, and a small lamp with a warm glow, not rich, not flashy, just thoughtful. Ella bounced on that mattress like joy had springs and asked if she could sleep there forever, and Edward stood in the doorway with an expression I've only seen on men who lost something they don't have words for. We learned each other the way people should, by the small, faithful things. He drank black coffee from a plain white mug, same one every morning, even though the cabinet had glassware that sparkled like it cost more than my rent for a year. He left at the same minute, came home at the same minute, like his body didn't trust chaos anymore. And he looked for Ella first, always like a ritual that proved the day happened. Ella asked him questions with a toddler's urgency. Why do birds fly? Why does the hose snake? Why are leaves green? And he answered like her curiosity was a sacred thing, not a noise to be managed. One afternoon she asked Uncle Edward, why don't you have kids in your big house? He knelt again, eyes already shiny. My little girl went to live in heaven. She was 5, a little bigger than you. Do you cry? She asked. Sometimes, princess. Then I can be your little girl. Yeah, that happened. He cried, not messy, not performative, just human, and something in my chest slid loose from the corners I had nailed it to. I saw him not as the man with the gate and the fountain, but as a father without his child trying to remember how to live. We didn't call it love. We called it dinners where the food stayed warm because the conversation did. We called it porch talks after Ella fell asleep. We called it the quiet understanding of people shaped by loss. He asked what I wanted outside of survival, and I told him early childhood education, a little preschool with chipped paint on the fence and laughter anyway, and he tucked that inside his yes, the way men who build for a living tuck away blueprints they're not ready to show yet. Then the doorbell rang. Pattern interrupt. A young man stood there with a cheap bouquet and a nice enough shirt, and fear behind his eyes. I'm looking for Beatrice Allen, he said. I'm Ella's father. Jason. If it were you, what would you have done? The air in that living room got thick like heat off asphalt. Edward shifted in front of me slightly, like protection is a reflex you don't argue with. Who are you exactly? He asked, and Jason looked him up and down, and said the father, with a tone that wanted to prove something, not share a fact. I felt 100 old memories push against my ribs. The day I told Jason I was pregnant, and he scattered like birds at a gunshot. The nights I talked to a belly and told a baby we'd be okay. The shift from girl to mom, that no one witnesses but you. I told Jason he could meet Ella tomorrow, my term supervised safe. Edward didn't like it, and I told him gently, decisions about Ella are mine. He stepped back, hurt in his eyes, and I held his gaze as a promise and a boundary at the same time. Next day, 5 on the dot, Jason arrived with a doll and hope and nerves, and Ella did what kids do. She looked at me to see if the world was safe. Then she ran to show Uncle Edward the doll. Uncle Edward look, and the phrase real dad cut the air and sat heavy on the floor like a truth no one wanted to trip over. We tried to be adults. Jason said he wanted his family back. Edward said family is who shows up. I said, stop, I'm not a prize. Ella is not a tug-of-war rope. Jason asked me to marry him right there in the space between a man I used to love and the man I was learning to love, and it felt like being asked to pick a future without time to look at the map. I said no, not like this, not with old wounds pretending to be new promises. Here's the twist. While I was counting breaths and choosing words carefully, Edward was choosing panic. He called Jason to his office, sat him in front of a desk that belonged to a man who believed in order, and put an envelope on the wood, thick enough to change a life if you let it, $100,000 to disappear. Do you think that's fair? Jason took it. I won't excuse him. I won't condemn him. I'm just telling you what happened. He came to my garden with a story polished smooth. Got a job in New York, big opportunity, leaving tonight. And though my chest told me it was wrong, my mind let me believe because relief is loud when you've been afraid for too long. I said then, don't come back this time. And when the gate closed behind him, I felt both lighter and lonelier than I had in years. Edward came home and I told him Jason left. He asked, are you okay? And I said, I don't know. Maybe he realized he can't compete with you. And a flicker of guilt moved under his face like heat shimmer. Money shouldn't matter more than love, I said. And if you have never had to pick between rent and medicine, I hope you never do, because money does matter. It shouldn't, but it does. You know what I mean. We tried to do it right. We said dating, not rushing. We said respect, not possession. He said, I can't always tell where loneliness ends and love begins, but I know it's you I want to choose every day. And I let that sit in my chest like a warm stone. And then one Tuesday, in a kitchen that finally smelled like home, he told me the truth, every word. The envelope, the offer, the number, the strings. I felt anger climb my spine like a ladder, and I grabbed our 2 suitcases, and I left, no screaming, no breaking dishes, just a door closing on a line I never thought he would cross. Back at Mrs. Rose's, the nights were long again. The back room felt smaller, buses sighed outside like they felt sorry for us, and Ella asked where Daddy Edward went. And I said he's busy because how do you hand a 3-year-old words like manipulation and betrayal? He found us not with a lawyer or a car idling in a fancy neighborhood. He found us with a knocked-on door and a drawn face and a question, can I apologize, can I try? 15 days later, we met in a park where the swings squeak and teenagers carve their initials in the wooden bench. He looked thinner, older, and he didn't reach for me, he reached for honesty. I was afraid I tried to buy safety because fear told me love wasn't enough. I was wrong. I hurt you, and I lied to keep you. There is no excuse. I told him the part that burned hottest, I had already chosen you, and you didn't trust me to choose you without money making sure. He nodded like the world finally lined up with the truth. I said, I can't promise I'll never be scared again. And he said, I can't promise I'll never stupid again, but I can promise I'll never use money to solve you. To solve us, not now, not ever. Forgiveness isn't a prize you hand out. It's a door you open slowly and hold together. I told him, you get one chance, not 3, 1. Radical honesty, no envelopes, no backdoor fixes therapy. If we need it, boundaries we actually follow. And he said yes, without flinching. Because sometimes love is yes, and then daily proof. We rebuilt. Not with grand gestures, with small faithful ones. We dated like we should have from the start. Parks and early dinners and talks that lasted past the closing shift. I introduced him to my neighborhood, where the corner store sells laundry soap by the scoop. He introduced me to his crew. The men who pour concrete and set steel and roll their eyes at architects. He let them see him soft with Ella, and he didn't care what that said about power. He found me a meeting with the community college counselor, not to push me to walk me in and sit in the lobby with a paperback, while I asked about early childhood education and financial aid. We told Ella the truth, sized for a child. When she asked, "Are you my dad now?" he said, "I would be honored to be your dad. That's something you and your mommy get to decide." And when she said, "Can I call you Dad today?" he looked at me, and I looked at him, and we said, "If that's what you want." And she nodded, serious like a judge, and then laughed, because 3, we moved back, not to the life we had, to the life we chose. Same house, new rules taped to the fridge like a contract. No secrets, no surprises. Sunday dinners, messy on purpose. Ella mixing pancake batter, while he pretends it's a Michelin situation. Sometimes I still catch him staring at the doorway of the little room on the back, like he's checking that the past won't take us again. And when he does, I put a hand on his shoulder, and he breathes easier. Both of us remembering trust isn't a speech. It's a rhythm. Now, before you run to the comments, let me ask you, do you forgive a man who did the wrong thing for terrified reasons? Or do you draw a line and never cross it again? If it were you, would you have taken that envelope or burned it on his desk? Would you have moved a child into a stranger's mansion for a steady check, or would you have kept knocking on doors in the rain, jaw clenched, pride intact, fever rising? Stick around, because what happened next will blow your mind. He didn't buy me a car. He didn't buy me silence. He bought groceries when it was his turn, and he wrote me a post-it that said, "I'm proud of you," when I got my acceptance letter. We stood in the kitchen at midnight, me with flour on my cheek, him with dishwater on his shirt. Ella asleep in a bed that's truly hers, and he said a sentence I didn't expect. "I'll sign whatever papers you want. So your power in this house is legal, not borrowed, not owed to me." Yeah, that happened. A man with more money than I can count, offering me legal power in a home I clean, a life we share, because he finally understood love is stewardship, not control. Here's the part that might make you mad, or make you nod. I chose to forgive him, not because money can excuse sin, because humility can transform it. I set the boundary, and he honored it daily, not when it suited him. And Jason, I don't spend words on a man who priced his absence and cashed it. I spend them on women who are counting coins in jars tonight, and on men who think power means never saying I was wrong. So tell me, do you think that's fair? Is Edward a cautionary tale with a happy accident? Or a man who learned late but for real? Is my choice a betrayal of pride, or a blueprint for survival with dignity? I won't wrap this in a bow. Money matters, and love matters, and the truth is, we live at their intersection more often than we admit. In my house now, there's laughter, and the right kind of noise. There's a scholarship form with a coffee stain on it. There's a little girl who calls 2 names when she wakes up, and both of us answer, and there's a rule taped to the fridge that says, "No decisions about Beatrice without Beatrice," and that one's in bold. If it were you, what would you have done? What would you do now? Fight me in the comments, defend me, challenge me, tell me where you're watching from. Tell me if love should get a second chance when money gets in the way. Tell me the moment you had to choose between pride and medicine. And if this story sat with you like it sat with me, hit like, share it with someone who needs a messy, honest hope, and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter. I read your comments. I really do, and some nights your words are the light I needed to find the door back to myself.